And welcome to another exciting adventure of the energy that surrounds us. I'm your host, Michael. And tonight's show is a really special episode. I am excited to have the guest with us. And we're going to kind of swap it up a little bit because it is St. Patrick's Day. And one of the things I'm going to do right now is put up a link. There is a QR code if you feel inclined to donate to the podcast show. I would greatly appreciate it. I don't get paid for doing this, and it will help me keep the show going. So you are welcome to contribute to your heart's desire. I'm not going to stop you. And with that being said, I also am surprisingly going to break my tradition, and I am actually going to read the bio for my guest tonight. So, with that being said, here we go, and let's make sure I don't screw up this bio.
It's okay.
So, tonight's guest is India Zoe Prema. She is a transformational guide, strategist, and creator of the Awakening Within philosophy. Through her work in shadow work and conscious self inquiry, she helps individuals identify the unconscious patterns, beliefs, and emotional imprints that quietly shape their decisions, relationships, and life direction. With a background in leadership strategy, talent development, and human behavior, India blends intuitive insight with practical frameworks to help people reconnect with their authentic selves, dissolving self sabotaging patterns, and step into deeper clarity, power, and purpose. India Zoe Prema helps people uncover the hidden patterns running their lives so they can reconnect with their authentic self and live with clarity, power, and purpose. So I give you the one, the only shadow extraordinaire, India Zoe Prema.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. I'm so happy to be here. I'm really excited. I loved your introduction, the visuals, the music. It was very powerful, bringing energy into the field with us as well. So, yeah, I want to just talk a little bit about how I came about doing this work. And I can tell you it's all through experience. I had up until 2008, I lived a pretty traditional life, very much through the lens of the third dimension, the 3D. Had a career for over 2 decades at that point in human resources, specifically in the area of talent acquisition. And I was sober in Alcoholics Anonymous for 21 years at the time, 38 years sober. And what happened is that my life went into a full collapse, like a full-blown collapse. And I had no idea what was happening. I had 10 life crises in 10 months. And everyone around me, including myself, did not know what was happening. And it was like what I'm going to refer to as my higher self was really screaming at me. But I didn't know any of this language. I didn't know all the stuff I know now, 17 years later. And it was like I knew something really big was happening. I just didn't understand what was happening. And it was quite a frightening journey. I ended up being in the dark night of the soul for a very long time. And it wasn't like I set out on this path to be conscious. Like I didn't even know what that meant. Years later, when I started working with my own coach, she said to me, she goes, "We need to move you from your head to your heart." And I go, "Why would I do that?" It's like it was all so foreign to me. Everything in my life was about labels: my job, my career, how much money I had, my retirement, the home I lived in, my community of sobriety, all of it. And when it got stripped back and I was standing there very raw, I had no idea who I was. And I think at that time I was 47. And I still was like, clueless. And I had some very, very, very profound experiences from 2008. And I kind of wandered by myself. At the time, I was 21 years sober, deep in the center of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is a wonderful program. And all of a sudden, I was having this experience where I was yelling at myself, telling myself I was not going to go to another meeting. I was going to feel all my feelings, because I didn't realize that all the years of service work, I was going to serve others, but I wasn't dealing with my own emotions. And because I had a beautiful life on the outside, I thought, of course there is a God. Look at how great my life is, right? And then I spent probably 8 years just wandering kind of aimlessly, trying to pull it all back together. And then I met a coach and that I've been working with for many, many years. And that was when we discovered I was in the dark night of the soul. And I went through a very dark period where I didn't want to hurt myself. I just didn't want to go on living. And I couldn't make any sense out of my life. I was doing all this changing on the inside, but yet I was still attached to the outer world because I kept trying to put it back together. And I did. I got my career going back again and money in the bank and all the things happening. And then I started to have some very deeply profound experiences working with plant medicine, and which I didn't think I would ever do because of being in AA. And so what happened for me is that I started working with a shaman and a coach. And then I started combining those two pieces together, doing my own work. And then I started to realize over my own journey that self-awareness was not something that I had at all. And the depth of experiences that I've had both in the fifth dimension and the third dimension have been extremely profound. All of the frustrations that I had at work, I came to understand that those were very big gifts that I had. And because I didn't have any self-awareness, I would get frustrated at work and I would just think everyone was dumb and incompetent. Not realizing that what I came in with in this life, in this incarnation, were these beautiful gifts. And so I was in my ego. And what I started to learn through my own journey, and when I say I do deep work, I mean, I have been purposely single for the last 5 years, and I do very deep, deep work within myself because I cannot teach what it is I do not know. And how I know that is through my own experiences. And so I have tested the limits of a lot of things. And the journey has been very ungraceful at times. But what happens is that if we kind of look at the essence of who we are, like if this is our essence, and this is why we call it the layer of the onion, right? It's just like we are these layers out here. And we start out here in this layer of the onion. The amount of work I've done, I am way into the center of my onion. Right. And that's why we seemingly always feel like, I thought I worked through this, right? I thought I worked through this. What it is that we cannot deal emotionally, mentally, or spiritually with things that we don't have any experience with. So it's kind of like we don't just go to Harvard, right? It's like we have to go through kindergarten through sixth grade, junior high, and high school to get the foundation. And that's kind of what happens. It's how we can get into the center of who we are, right? And start to understand what our true purpose is in this life. It's not to grow up, go to college, find a mate, have kids, and go into debt. That is not the sole purpose here in this incarnation. And so for me, where I have really come to understand a lot of things and where I work with people is that I start with self-awareness first. Because without self-awareness, nothing else can shift. And I wrote a book that I published in 2008, and I'm actually getting ready to do a first edition or the second edition. And what I started to realize in my own writing when I read it out loud for the first time to someone is that I was a victim of my circumstances, like 99.9% of the planet. We believe that everything is happening to us. We don't see it as happening for us. And that's how we become the victim of everything. Well, you said that to me, so you hurt my feelings. That's why I'm mad at you, right? So we go into this this battle that you triggered me, so it's your fault. So we go into the victim, and what we don't understand is that when we're triggered, that is where the medicine lies within us. It's the time where we go, well, why am I triggered? And then we have to start peeling that back. That's what shadow work is. It's understanding why I'm triggered by all these things, why I'm in judgment, why I label everything, why I need to control everything. And when we start to, and it's kind of like, you could ask the question, well, why in the hell would I want to do that? Why would I want to look at myself that way? That is where the true freedom is. The true freedom is not being held in bondage of ourself by all of our programming, our conditioning, our patterns, the way that we were raised. And most of us don't ever question that. So therefore, we don't really know who we are. So this is a lot of the work that I do, because watching people, mostly women I work with, because there's a huge disparity between men who are willing to look at themselves and women. It's kind of the nature of the beast, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I work with mostly women, and to start to, when you help people to peel back the ways that they have viewed the world, which has got them to where they are in their life, which is usually not very comfortable when they get honest. They're not comfortable, or their relationship is bad, or whether it's a relationship with the spouse, with their coworkers, with the boss, with their parents, with their siblings. Relationships are relationships. It doesn't matter what we label them. So it's really beautiful work when we step back and we start to go, oh, that's why I do that. That's why we start connecting our own dots. And so it's a really beautiful thing to witness others going through a level of understanding who they are and how they operate. And I've been through a lot of stuff. I mean, I've been through breast cancer. I've been through losing everything. I mean, there is not anything that I really haven't had to experience, because in order to understand and track someone where they are in their process, I've had to go through it. So my experience does not come from a book, or my teachings do not come from a book. They come from real life, very profound experiences. So I will there.
No, thank you. I'm I had so many questions coming up into my head through everything you were sharing. And one thing I want to add, though, real quick, is to acknowledge the intro. You were commenting about it. That is my cousin does that for me, and he does phenomenal work. He does my intro and the outro, so I'll let him know that you said that. He loves to hear how people are loving his work and how it's helping my show. And he's, yeah, we just, collaborate on that, and it's really cool. And one thing about your way you phrase everything, I love how you paint the pictures with your words. And I kind of personally have this theory around shadow work, that the dark night of the soul is the catalyst that starts the shadow work, that is part of the hero's journey that we all do. And I don't view it, I get why they call it Dark Knight, but somewhat I wish they wouldn't, because it gives this connotation of you're going to go into this really dark, dismal, scary place. And granted, some people may, but you may not. And so I wonder sometimes when people are doing their shadow work and they're, having a dark night, if they don't think of it that way, because it's not dark and it's not like this scary thing, and they just totally miss the opportunity.
Yes, that is true. But I can tell you, when I experienced it in 2008 for probably over 10 years, when you don't know what's happening, it's a very frightening place to be, because you are crippled with anxiety and depression and confusion. It's why people commit suicide generally at about 6 months. What I came to realize, and I actually wrote this in my book, I'm like, my own soul sent me into the dark night of the soul. It was a wake-up call, and I wasn't getting it. It's why things got more and more and more and more painful, until it literally stripped everything from me in that collapse in 2008.
Right.
And so what happens, and I'm glad that you brought this up, because it kind of touches on something else that I think is really important. I learned back in 2008, I stopped labeling things: good, bad, right, wrong. I didn't stop then. It's when it came into my awareness. Most of us, and this ties back into shadow work, is that when things seemingly look bad, like during COVID, I sent myself to a trauma center for a variety of reasons. If people from the outside looked at me and went, "Oh my God, are you okay? And did you send yourself to a trauma center?" And then if I wasn't who I was, I would have gone into shame and some guilt around that. That trauma center was a catalyst for many things for me, including doing shadow work. So what happens is that our greatest teachings come from our deepest pain. Does that make sense?
It does.
So when we classify something as bad, oh, I have really bad behavior, I don't want anyone to know that about me. If it's your greatest teaching, it's something to be honored, not something to shame. Right? And this is really, really important. And the second we start attaching things to our behavior is when we start spiraling ourselves. And it's not, with all the wisdom that I have today, I can still make poor decisions consciously. And I'm like, there's the medicine is in here. You've got to find the medicine. And it takes me doesn't mean I don't beat myself up. But I often, and this is another thing that I want to say, is that It's one thing to visit an emotion, but it's another thing to live there. So I just visit bad places. I don't live there anymore.
Right.
Sense?
And one thing too that I think is important to know from my experience about doing shadow work and dark nights of the souls is I view them as, let's say you have this pattern of going and getting, $1,000 in the bank that you call your spare money. Well, when you get 1,001, it's like, oh, I got to go spend that dollar. And, that may seem silly to people, but it's a pattern that keeps you from growing. And so you are at choice to go, well, that choice of, that dollar, bumming me out and making me have to go do this, that's not really hurting me right now.
Yeah.
And so you're at choice to go, okay, I'll look at it later. But then what happens is later, you may be where you're at $999 and you're wishing you had that $1 because
Mm-hmm.
you need to do something, and you go into the opposite panicking that you don't have that $1. And that's the universe's way of going, you sure you don't want to look at this pattern that you have? And again, you can say no, it's not, I'm okay with it right now. But then eventually something's going to happen and you're going to be like, oh my God, I am in trauma overload. I am overwhelmed. I'm really swamped. I'm feeling like I'm drowning. And it's the universe saying, we gave you all these other options to lightly look at it. You said no. Now you're going to look at it our way. And it may be an extreme. And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
It's like my dad would call it the cosmic 2x4. And I go, yeah, I call it the cosmic 6x12. Got to really get that going.
Yeah. And this is exactly why I start with self-awareness in my work, right? Because self-awareness means I'm going in, right? I'm going in, I'm looking at this. I'm not looking at it from the outward perspective. It's like we have to be the observer of our own life. So if we were to use your example of that dollar, it's like, it's not just a pattern. It's just like, one, it's where's the pattern? Where is that coming from? We have to understand, we have to get from the outer layer of our onion to the inner layer of our onion. It's like, okay, but we don't know what we don't know. I mean, I had a guide, I still have a guide, I still have a teacher. You know what I mean? And when we don't have the tools and the resources to understand, it's just like, this is why it's important to seek guidance in doing shadow work, because it's not only a pattern, but it's also a behavior. So we have to start to understand, why do I need to spend that dollar? Oh, well, let's see, it's because I grew up in a poor family and I never knew when the next meal was going to come from. Most of our patterns, conditioning, beliefs all stem from childhood. And when we don't get in and start to understand, oh, this is why I judge others, we don't come into a state of consciousness. We are running in the unconscious mind. And that is driven by all those patterns and behaviors. We need to bring them to the surface and look at them. And it's like taking a 50-gallon garbage bag, and our whole life we're just putting all of our stuff in it, right? And then we're just kind of dragging it around mentally, emotionally, energetically, and we don't even know why. And then we just kind of walk through life really heavy, really heavy. And when we start to unpack that, and we're like, okay, why do I have to always spend this dollar? We don't stop. We have to pause in life. We have to give space. to start to reflect on, why am I making these choices? Because I want to right now. And sometimes that's where we start. I trust me, in some areas, I started with like, just because this is what the fuck I want to do. That's why. You know what I mean? And then it started to soften, 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 soften over time. You know,
And
go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, too, is when you say childhood, there is aspects of our lives that we don't think about, and in the metaphysics, we call them past lives
Hmm.
and patterns of behaviors that have existed in our DNA from past lives comes up and shows up in today's world. And it may be, like you were saying, with the example of the dollar, is because you didn't know what you had. It could also be, you were the peasant family and that dollar was all you had, and so you held on to it maybe, and that's why you didn't include it in this. Is this was your fallback
Yes.
because you needed just in case. And so now today you're not in that kind of life, you're not in that environment, but your mind doesn't know it, your soul doesn't know it. Your soul just says, hey, we got that dollar.
Yes.
Hey, here, are we going to do this pattern? Are we going to run this program?
Yep. And I'm
And
sorry. I'm like so glad you said that, because this is a very multi-layered existence that we're experiencing, right? It's our soul comes in with a blueprint and says, this is what I'm choosing to do in this incarnation, right? And we've had many incarnations. It's like understanding, and this is why I used to get frustrated in corporate America, because the things I used to run massive projects before I got into human resources. And I couldn't even believe at the age of 32 that I was doing what I was doing at the magnitude I was doing it. And everyone was like, how are you even doing this? And I'm like, I don't know. It was like strategically, I could just see everything. And I would just be like, this is what we're doing. This is how it is. And boom, 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 boom. And I would just start laying the course out in managing a $7 million construction project, furniture, actually. I couldn't understand for a very long time how I was capable of doing that, because I'm like, I didn't have any experience. And what I came to know once I started working in more of a spiritual space and understanding energy a little bit better and understanding past lives and gifts, I'm like, oh, I was told many times that I have been a general in many lifetimes. So then I started connecting these dots. I'm like, that's why I could do that. That's why I can become laser focused and get so much done, right? Because there is the element of that. There's the element of, yes, the karma we've created, our ancestral karma. We have a soul and then we have a personality. We have a higher self and what I call the small self. And most of us, I did the same thing because I didn't know any better. I let my personality, my soul self, be the bus driver of my existence. So if I'm the bus, if my existence is the bus, my personality was the bus driver. My soul was nowhere to be even discussed. I didn't even know what that meant. This is what our intuition is, right? We follow our intuition, our higher self. It's our guide. It's leading us to our purpose. And this is why I said at the very beginning, I'm like, the purpose here is not to grow up, go to college, find a mate, have kids, and go into debt. It doesn't mean we can't have those things, but there's no discussion, no attention to the soul. And the soul is what our primary purpose is, with the personality coming in behind that.
right, and one of the things too that I think that is the issue that a lot of people have in shadow work, and again, this is from my experience and from what I witness, watching everything, is we're a society of we want the magic pill. We want it to be a one and done, never have to look at again. And so as we, like you're saying with the onion, you work on it, you're like, okay, I did the core, I did the work, I'm done with that. And then it shows up again, and you're like, well, maybe, I didn't get to the core. Well, I'm getting to the core this time. And it shows up again. People are like, that's it. I'm done. This isn't working because it doesn't fit the program that we've been taught.
Yeah.
You look at it, you do it once or twice, that's it. If you keep repeating, you're not doing it right. So you just quit.
Yeah.
And the other factor that I think people don't realize is there's the gift of, say, you're in a situation where you have a friend that comes up to you and says, hey, I had this extra money, what do I do with it? And your program is kicking in and going, hey, he's got the extra dollar. Should we tell him, to save it? Should we tell him to go spend it right away, get rid of it? Well, that's still your program, but you instead go and say, hey, what do you think you should do? And you flip it back on them. That's you showing growth, but at the same time, it's like what I like to call the sideways, where the same issue still will come out, but it's not you directly. So it's like your mind is like kind of tricking you a little bit and going, hey, here's that little shadow work issue, but it's not you doing it, so you don't have to worry about it. And it's like, to me, it's like it's the universe's way of saying it's still here, but look at how you're not taking it on. So look at your growth. Okay, we'll let you go now. But yeah, so in other words, it can come out sideways in ways we don't anticipate.
Right. And this is, again, why self awareness is so important. I can only speak through the work I do. I can't speak through how others do shadow work, right? Because what self awareness does is it takes us from a place of going outside of ourselves, right? Because most of us, no matter how much you pull back all of our shadow, what 8 billion people on the planet experience is low self-worth and low self-esteem. Okay, so in the work I do, while we're peeling back, we're also building that. Because what that does is that it keeps us from what we call energy leaking. Most of us, we have a bad day and we got to spew it out to someone. That person cut me off, right? And there it all goes. We don't ever stop and pause and go, wow, what's going on with me right now? Why is my nervous system dysregulated? Why am I so angry? Why am I so frustrated? And then we don't do that because it's scary for people and they don't even know how to begin. So what happens is that when we start looking at ourselves very deeply, we stop going to others for confirmation and validation. I don't need to ask you what to do with that dollar. I already know. Does that make sense?
It does.
The only way to get there, I have a tagline, the only way out is in. It's the only way. And what happens is that, yes, our society teaches us, again, we're funneled like a herd of cattle. That's why we have the matrix, right? It's a herd of cattle because, again, we're in so many layers, not just in our own onion, but energetically, universally, we live in a massive galaxy. We live in a massive galaxy. We're energy bodies. There's no difference between me and you from an energetic standpoint. And it was many, many years ago, I was like, before I knew anything in my life, like when it unraveled, and then I had another bunch of crises happen after that. I was like sticking my middle finger at the universe, shaking my fist at it, going, what did I do to deserve all this? Right? Like, why is it just crumbling down around me? What I wasn't understanding is that the very thing that I was asking to not have, which was more pain, my words, the vibration of my words and my thoughts were giving me the very thing I didn't want. And man, it's a very deep learning. It's why the way that I work, I don't work like a therapist. I don't work with like a psychologist. I work in session work. Like we do shadow work every 2 weeks. It's not about going out of yourself and then coming back in when you're in crisis. It's like, this is a time to go in and we're going to stay in. Because a lifetime of looking at ourselves and that onion, what happens is that when we start moving inward in our onion, the things that confuse us and causes pain and sadness and grief, it gets softer because we start to understand we're in a process. We start to understand we're in a process. And that process is surrender.
Right.
Surrendering to what it is that we're holding on to.
Right.
That's
And
where the sovereignty comes from.
yeah, and one of the things that I had an epiphany in my experience with shadow work was, like I said earlier, you had the mindset of, oh, we're going into a dark place. We're going into something that's not working. Oh, we have to go within, to work on this. But there is a flip side to the shadow work that I feel like nobody notices. And I noticed one day when I was in a situation and I noticed my reaction was different than it was before.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and when I realized that, I sat down and I was like, wow, I made progress. I didn't react the same way.
Mm-hmm.
But then I sat down, and when I really thought about it, I realized it's not that I reacted differently, it's I became aware faster of what was going on. And so I was able to take myself out and go, okay, here's the full situation. This, how am I going to react? Do I make the emotional reaction? Is that what's called for? Do I make a more calm, energetic response?
Yeah.
And I know it sounds like I'm going through a long, lengthy process, but my mind can do it really fast. And so it may look like 30 seconds to you, but my mind, it's like I've gone through several minutes of contemplation
Mm-hmm.
and played out all these scenarios and was like, okay, this is the way that we need to react. And I think that that's something that I think people need to be aware of, is to look at, situations and go, this used to trigger you and you used to get angry and it'd take you like an hour to cool off and be able to come to common grounds on it. Now you're able to do it in 5 minutes.
Yes.
Who
Yes.
knows? Next time you may be able to do it in 2 seconds, but
Yeah.
we don't look at the small victories along the way.
Yes. And that's another really important thing that you say, especially, and I'm going to speak specifically to women about this, because we hold so many roles. You know what I mean? As being a mother, that job is 24/7, right? We're trying to maybe have a career. We've got a family, we have a spouse, we have kids, we have our parents, we have our siblings, we have our friends, right? We're doing a lot of juggling, the household chores, all the stuff. Excuse me. And what happens, because again, I notice this in my own self. And when I start to notice, oh God, I don't honor what I've accomplished. I wrote a book. I didn't honor it. It was like, check it off the list. Oh, wow, I went through a massive, deeply profound experience, many of them, in which I had a full name change. I just checked it off the list. We don't honor, and this is why, because we live so quickly and so fast, we live in a world of instant gratification, is that when we don't take the time to stop and pause and slow down, I'm telling you, I used to run at 100 miles an hour consistently. When people meet me now, they're like, you were like that? I was like, yeah, because I was always in my head. I was in the ego, but the shadow, unwinding my own shadow and understanding and having compassion for myself brought me from my head into my heart. So things, I can get frustrated at someone, but I get frustrated. I don't stay up in my head and just start analyzing them. I'm like, they're on their own soul's journey. Everyone is in their own soul's journey. And I came to that very deep understanding when I had that cathartic experience with 21 years sober in 2008. And I sat there and I was like, if you would have asked me if my life would have been right where it is 3 months ago, I would have told you you were out of your freaking mind. And I was like, so if I don't know what my own life had in store for me, now I say my own soul has in store for me, I certainly don't know yours. And what that keeps me from is judging you for where I think you should be. That's not my place.
Yeah.
So all these things, so this is what shadow work and why I talk about how it sets us free. Because it truly does. It starts to free the mind and allows us to be in our heart, to allow us to live a more peaceful existence from within. Because we start to understand what's transpiring. Every layer of that onion is the same process. It's the same process. We just become more graceful every time we start to move in, right? It's why we don't have new things we're dealing with. They show up, the teaching shows up through different people because we have soul contracts. But the beauty of it is that while it's ungraceful and it's painful when we don't understand, every time and it's the most painful in that outer layer, but once we start to go inward into our own self, into our own essence, it's like, oh, because we have self-awareness, we go, oh, I know where I am right now. This is really uncomfortable, but I'm in a process right now. We start to surrender. We come in. This is how our frequency raises. We don't demand ourselves into another frequency.
Right.
All this stuff is very multi-layered, and yet it is extremely beautiful because this is how our field starts to expand. This is how, when it is that we want to manifest, comes through the energy field, not through what I wish. And this is why shadow work, which I'm now transitioning out of calling my work shadow work, because it's inner work. It really is a beautiful journey. And let me tell you, I never knew what I was made of until things started transpiring very painfully in my life from 2008. And now I stand and I'm just like, like grounded, in a way that, I couldn't have gotten myself here on my own if I wanted to. It took a lot of help early on, a lot of help. And now I go to my own coach once every couple of years.
I love how the universe works in synchronicity because I just did my very first presentation at a conference on Saturday, and it was on the power and mythos of the hero's journey, which And hearing you, I feel like your soul journey is another name for the hero's journey. And part of what I was explaining in the hero's journey on the 3 steps that Campbell set out for us to follow, I call out the shadow work side of it. And I go, you are at choice to look within yourself and say, this pattern doesn't serve me, and do shadow work around it.
Yeah.
You're at choice to, if somebody, walks up to you or bumps you, and the way you react to that situation, you are at choice to do the shadow work around your reaction. And I said, so unfortunately, guys, I'm sorry to say, but there's always shadow work everywhere. You can't avoid it. And I said, but here's the thing. Here's the key to your shadow work. You're in the driver's seat of it. You're in control of it, and you determine when you're done with it. And so, I use the journey as the whole shadow work aspect of it, and going, you decide, okay, I'm going to start doing this, and going, I'm comfortable where I'm at with the realizations I have now. And it's totally fine to go, we're done.
Yeah.
Now, you may, still be triggered by stuff, but not as badly. So you're like, I'm getting overwhelmed. I feel like I've done enough. I can do it now with this. And the next time, I can go deeper. And that's totally okay. You don't have to go the full distance and do the full thing. And on
Mm-mm.
the flip side is, I was saying to people is, you can look at it that way, or you can look at it and go, wow, look at this growth that I've been doing, and look at the power and knowledge I'm gaining.
Yeah.
What more can I get? And keep going.
Yeah.
Both of those are totally the right answer. But what it comes down to is, you in the driver's seat. You're the hero of your story, your journey, your work. So it's up to you to decide how it's going to look and how it's going to play out. And I think, there's a huge power in that, because a lot of people, when we mention that, they look and go like Luke Skywalker. They're like, that's a character in a movie. That is so scripted. That's not reality. And, that was this. We write it off, but we never own it as our own. And so that's what I was in my presentation bringing awareness to. This is us. We are this work. And I even laughingly said, when we transition on, the shadow work doesn't end. It still goes on the next step. So you're never actually going to lose it.
Right. And this is why when we don't understand the soul's purpose here, we're going to come back and repeat it. That's why it's like it's very powerful work. It's very powerful, and it holds you in a place of like, I am grounded. That's our superpower, is the ability. It takes courage, it takes bravery. Even if you think you don't have any, you will find it. You just will. And we do that with a lot of support around us. Not people who, who we surround ourselves with is very critical. Because I can't, if I'm already scared and afraid of what I'm going to look at inside of myself, and then everyone in my universe is telling me and just compounding that, I'm not going to get anywhere. But if I'm scared and frightened and I surround myself with people who have walked the journey before me, I will grow. I will change. There is a transformation. I can assure you, there is a transformation that will happen. I mean, nobody can take what we choose to do, because we have so many aspects of ourselves. We have so many aspects of ourselves. We're a caretaker, we're a lover, we're a warrior, we're a business person, we're an artist, we're a musician, whatever those are, and they want attention. Most of us just go outside of ourself consistently. We don't ever know who we are. And that was the journey I was on because I didn't know any different. Now I do know the difference.
And one of the other things too about the the shadow work is there's an aspect that I gained from my experiences that really freed me and opened me up to where, to me, like dark nights, I get excited now about them coming. And it's actually two faceted. Is the first facet is I know going into it, I've already done shadow work. So if I've done it once, I can do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, I look at it and I go with the mindset of, what am I going to learn from this? What am I going to unlock and awaken in this process? And what's going to be on the other side of this? And it's like a little excitement. And I'm wondering, do you ever feel that too? Like,
Oh, yeah.
bring it. I want to do this now. I want to know what's coming.
I have, yes. And sometimes it depends on what's coming because there are, I'm very much at the root of things for me. And they're big. They're big. They're very ancestral. So they're big that I won't go into, but a couple of weeks ago, I was just like, I want to fucking destroy something. Like I was in that kind of energy because it was so big. I wasn't sure I could hold it. And I nurtured myself is what I did. Instead of calling people and going, oh my God, you were right. Because that's what we do when we're stressed out. Is that I gave myself a lot of nurturing. I nurtured that inner child because this is where the root of our stuff comes from. I was having to comfort myself. And in doing so, I was like looking around the house. I'm like, I just want to fucking tear this house apart. There was so much energy inside of me, and I knew what was happening. And so I was able to walk myself through. I couldn't have done that in the outer layer of my onion, I could assure you. But I'm in the center of the onion with the wisdom to know I'm in the center of my onion. I'm in the root. And I woke up the next day and I was like, I felt like a totally different person. I was like, because I surrendered to what was transpiring for me. And that's what it is that when we surrender energetically, we're moving into a higher frequency. That's what happens. And it's beautiful. The magic, which we haven't even talked about yet, the magic that happens by doing shadow work, it's like we're getting rid of the clutter, right? We're getting rid of the clutter. The deeper we go, the higher we will rise. We can't go this deep and expect to rise this high. It's in direct proportion. And the things that I have experienced with medicine and without medicine, the ability to see into other dimensions, the ability to see things for what they truly are, not through the lens of the 3D. It's like, oh, wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I also lived in Sedona for 3 years. That was quite a journey, what I experienced there, what I could see there. And I had people confirming and validating that what I was witnessing was actually true. And that takes us into a place of fun and playfulness versus just being in this heavy, mundane 3D energy that's very dense. The magic happens through doing the work because that's the treasure. That's the treasure. You don't just get it because you wish for it, you get it because you've done the work. That's the beauty of this whole thing.
Right. And I don't mean to interrupt your train of thought, but I just wanted to point out as observation that we are close to the hour. Do you have time to go a little bit longer
I
and
do.
answer some questions?
Yes, I would love to.
Okay. I just wanted to ask, so to be time aware. Well, I'm going to shift over because Sierra's Dreams asked a question earlier, and I'm not going to throw any comments or anything into it because I'm not sure what she's asking. So I don't want to confuse the situation, but you may. She's asking, do they call that metacognition?
Um, what is they? I
I
think
think she's talking about people in general or the medical field or thinkers.
I can't really answer that because I'm not really sure what it's tied to. this is the place that I operate from, and why labels are not part of my process. Because the medical journey, unless it's something scientific or where like science and spirituality are finally coming into a marriage, right? Everything is about my own journey, because what I have experienced has been so deeply profound, it's not even funny. Metacognition is, I believe, within the mind, right? So we're in the mind. We don't want to be in the mind. We want to be in the energy field. See, most of us go in and we start analyzing. We start analyzing. We start analyzing. We start analyzing with a mind that we only use 10% of, a reptilian brain, 10%. So if we only use 10%, we're not using 10% all the time. We're using like 0.5% of it.
Right.
Right?
Some
So
people less.
some people less, and that's their journey. It doesn't mean we don't get frustrated over it. But what happens is that the more that we come into self-awareness and we start to realize that there's all these unconscious patterns of judging and criticizing people constantly, it's like a tape running in there, right? It's like it's like excess weight. It's like, why does this even need to be here? That comes from an old pattern. That's a childhood pattern that probably one of your parents or a sibling or a teacher criticized you. And until we understand that, we will continue the patterns of behavior. We just will.
Right.
They won't go away because we ignore them. They won't go away because we looked at them once. And so I'm not really sure at what point in this conversation that she said is that metacognition.
It was when we were talking about going within and doing the shadow work and everything. She's in the chat room. Thank you, Serious Dreams. She says it was on being aware of your surroundings, the stopping yourself before reacting, assessing the situation.
I can't, honestly cannot answer from the question of whether that's metacognition or not. What I call it is self-awareness, because we're not going into what is seemingly transpiring, happening to us. We're pausing and we're reflecting. We have to become the observer of our own existence. Wow, what just happened right there? I realize that really triggered me. Well, why did that really trigger me? Where did that come from? How did that make me feel? I go back because we start to peel it back. We don't just stay at the surface and go, you did this to me. That's where the victim, this is such a multi-layered journey we're on. It's awesome.
It is, and to me, an aspect, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when we talk about the magic that happens with the shadow work or inner work, is I'll notice, my mind starting to get cluttered and it's hard to focus, and I feel stuck in some stuff, and I'll look around and I'll be like, man, my desk is like, I can't even see the desk. It's so covered. And I'll start to go through everything, go, don't know why I saved this, don't need this anymore. This isn't serving me anymore. Oh, yeah, I need to hold on to this for this. And next thing I know, my desk is like really clean and neat. And I'll sit down and I'll be like, oh, I need to do this. And it's like my mind is able to focus, and that super awareness like comes back and it's like kicks in. And so I'm wondering, is that kind of what we're talking about with the magic of the shadow work and the work within? Is we're decluttering our space so our mind is decluttered, and therefore what's inside of us is also being decluttered.
Yes, because most of us go into storytelling consistently. What this person did and what they said and how they made me feel, and then what my mom did to me 10 years ago, and then my boy, it's like just all these tapes running. When that's happening, there is no space for what's in front of me in the future. We're not creating our dreams, our desires, a life that we want, and looking at that because we're so busy being in the past. It's like sitting in your car, the rear view mirror is this big for a reason. The windshield, which is for the front of us, is big for a reason. The rear view mirror, if you kind of look at it as a metaphor, it's designed for you to glance into it, look in the side view mirror, look in the, you know what I mean? Look back and then look in the side view mirror and then focus again on the windshield. But most of us look in that rear view mirror 24/7. We're so busy being hurt and angry and resentful at everyone who has done everything to us because we haven't received the medicine from it. It's why the pattern keeps repeating itself. When we start to see that, oh, you said something to me that triggered me, and now I'm going to receive that. That's the medicine. That shows us where we are not healed. But when
Right.
we don't know that, we just keep doing the same thing we've always done. And as we get older, we get more and more, our body starts to calcify. Literally, it starts to calcify when we're holding on to so much stuff. I had a woman, not only did I go to that trauma center 5 years ago, but I've also taught there for over a year as of recent. And there was a client that sat there. Some of the women happened to be were recovered from drugs and alcohol, even though that's not what the center was. And the one particular woman said, I don't relate to this conversation about drugs and alcohol. And I turned around and I looked at her because I had been watching and witnessing her. I said, drama is as big of a toxicity and an addiction as anything. And she was like, and I said, yeah, because we don't realize all these things because we don't have any self-awareness.
Right. And one thing I will say, because I went through QAnon, or not QAnon, Anon, and don't know why I said QAnon.
Al-Anon?
Al-Anon. Thank you. And one of the things that surprised me is, as much as for building hope as it is, I left there feeling void of hope, because their biggest message is you always have to keep your guard up. You always have to be watching, because this is not ever going to heal. It's never going to go away. And I was like, that's a shitty way to live life. what the hell are you telling these people? And I was like, no way. And I was like, and I never went back because I was like, And I joined another organization that was building men to communicate better and share their feelings and everything. And I thought, this is really great. But then again, the message was, if you're addicted to this once, you're addicted for life. And I was like, I don't buy that script. And I'd always be butting heads with them because I'm like, if you do the shadow work around why you're having that addiction or that issue, you can change it and you can heal from it and move on from it. You don't
Yes.
have to be forever labeled by it. And I find, how do you handle when you hear people saying, "Oh, I'm addicted to drinking, and yes, I'm 10 years sober, but I always have to be on guard. I could never go here because I'm always going to have that temptation, and I'm always at risk of faltering back and into that pattern." But nobody wants to go, well, rewrite the pattern.
Right. It's because, and I can tell you this from spending 21 years deep in the center of Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, I was like a staunch sponsor because that's how I was sponsored. Like, you don't do anything outside of AA, that's not going to keep you sober. I mean, I was just like, boom, by the book. And I had that experience when my whole life fell apart in 2008. It went into a collapse, and all of my friends abandoned me. It's because they were afraid that I was going to not that I was going to start drinking, right? Because that's where we go. I've lost a lot of friends who subsequently went out and tried to do it another way. So I understood that AA is not designed to deal with trauma. It takes you into behavior. Otherwise, 80% of those with 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years of sobriety have one massive crisis happen and they go back to drinking. That's what happens. And this is what I learned when I had a very cathartic experience with my higher self screaming at me in 2008. You are not going to go to another meeting. You're going to feel your feelings. Because I didn't realize at the time that all the service work I did by serving others who are in a seemingly much worse place than me, I wasn't dealing with my own shit. I wasn't dealing with any of it because I didn't know. And it was like my higher self, and I was like, oh, wow. I have not been to a meeting since that day. That was 17 years ago. And on February 7th, I had 38 years of sobriety. Most people would never have gone and stayed sober through the shit that I went through. But I knew something spiritually. I have what's called claircognizant. So there's clairaudient, clairvoyant, and there's claircognizant. Claircognizant means you have a sense of knowing. You don't know why you know shit, but you do. And I knew that something very profound what was happening. And let me tell you, I was hanging on for life because I had if I wasn't doing the fellowship and I hadn't found my tribe yet, I was just like, whoa, shit. It was scary. That we weren't talking about consciousness and self-awareness and the shadow and the dark night of the soul the way that we are now. And so what happens is that if you were to, I know that I will never drink again because addiction is very different than alcoholism. Okay. And I'm not going to get into that, but they are not one and the same. But what it is, anytime we seek anything outside of ourselves, we're soothing ourselves. We're soothing ourselves. And sometimes we need to do that until we don't anymore. We just don't. I can tell you I've had my own experiences with that. And I'm 38 years sober. I've had my own, and I'm like, okay, what am I learning from all this? What am I learning from all this? Because this is where the wisdom comes in. What am I? It's not by avoiding it, it's by experiencing it. And this is why we don't shame ourselves when we experience things that we think, oh God, I shouldn't be doing that. Yeah, maybe we shouldn't, but we are.
Yeah.
We are. And we have to embrace all of our self, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and everything in between. That's what makes the magic. That's what makes the magic.
Well, I think too, one of the things that I like to notice when I go to like where you sit down in these groups that shares things and everything is I start to notice when I'm people watching, there's like two kinds of people in the groups. Is the people that are there just because they want to feel like they belong and they're just going through the motions. And then you get the people who are, oh, you had that trauma. Well, wait till you hear my trauma. And they all start trying to one up each other to, like there's a prize of you get a gold medal for the biggest trauma of the night. And I always find that funny to watch. And then they'll come to me and they'll be like, so what are you doing here? And I'll be like, well, I'm just here just to see where I'm at in my life and how I'm doing right now. And they're all like, a lot of times they'll just be quiet and be like, I don't know what to say to that. Because I'm like, yeah, I'm not there to engage something. I'm not there to engage, somebody's story. And where I'm kind of going with this is I don't like when you go to places and people will open up and say, I had this experience and, this is how it impacted me and this is what it made me feel. And they go, well, that experience had to be made up because that doesn't sound real at all. And if you're not going to take this seriously, you can leave. And I'm like, the dude is sharing their experience. Why are you judging? Were you there? No. So how do you judge what you never saw? And I think that's a issue too that's at the core of a lot of these groups that say they do shadow work is everybody wants to judge by their experiences, other people's experiences, and going, oh, yeah, that's a good one. I remember when I had that happen. Yeah, I know what you mean. Or that can't be real. Are you sure that's what happened? Are you sure this is real?
Yeah. Yes. And who holds the container for that group is the most important person because that's what it is. There's no control of the container. It's interesting that you bring this up because one of the things that I just created is an 8-week series. I may move it to 6, but right now it's 8. It's a free series it's unfortunately and fortunately for women only. Doesn't mean I wouldn't create a men's group, but I don't work with men and women in the same container. The reason I don't is because we have different issues and men need to feel safe in expressing their true emotions and getting into their own trauma. And that's another topic. And women, because women roll their eyes at men and women do a lot of things, women have their own issues. And that's why I do not put men and women in the same healing container. So that way it gives both sexes, if you will, the opportunity to really be vulnerable and feel safe. What happens? So I'm creating this 6 to 8 week, we'll just say, series, and it's focusing solely on self-awareness. It's free, and I'm getting ready to put it out there. I have to get it on my website and all the other stuff, but I have all the work done. And there's guidelines. And I call it entering it into the garden, right? So the holding the container is really important. how someone, the facilitator, holds the container for the depth of work that is happening. And every woman, this is a guideline, every woman is responsible and only responsible for her own garden. Because when people start telling other people about what they think they should and shouldn't be doing, when they really don't know what's transpiring, because we don't know what we don't know, Michael. So
Right.
we may have grown exponentially, but in the big scheme of what's transpiring, we don't know, just like even in all the wisdom that I have gained from all I have been through, I don't know if I'm still far away from, you know what I mean? And so sometimes people see a little bit of depth within themselves and they think they've arrived somewhere. Now, when you're someone who has more experience, so it's the difference between, I'm in sixth grade right now, it's not about intellect, it's about experience. So if everyone's in sixth grade right now, but I'm in 12th grade, I'm the only one that knows that you're in sixth grade. Does that make sense? Because this is why a parent's a parent and a child is the child, because the parent's already gone through it.
Right.
It's the same thing. It's trusting who your facilitator is. And if it's not, if the container is not held in sacredness and responsibility, it can really cause some damage to people.
Yeah, and one thing I've noticed is doing my own shadow work as long as I have, and going through the process of my life of thinking I was broken. I learned all these healing modalities, I learned all these different techniques, and did a whole lot of work on myself to one day wake up and realize I'm not the author of this, so I'm never going to fix it. So I'm only responsible for my part, which has been fixed. And to just wait is, I have a dear friend of mine who she goes and she's working with a group of women, and they go and they do, like you're saying, they do the work of letting go of things. And I mentioned to her, I said one day, and I said, it's great that you're doing this, but have you ever thought of if you could find a guy who can become like a statue and you can just unload on, but that person won't take it on and won't take it personal and can just wipe it off? How, that could be another level of healing. And
Mm-hmm.
she said, well, that'd be great if you knew anybody like that. And I kind of just was snickering. I was like, well, I can do that. And she's like, really? I'll ask him, and because to me, it's like, it's one thing to say, okay, you had this shadow of, seeing this guy doing this. But visualizing it, you're putting yourself somewhat into that trauma state, and you're putting yourself at risk of getting stuck in the story again.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you have a blank person, you can go, at first you'll be like, well, I really can't yell at him because he didn't do anything. And they're like, well, just say to him what you want to say to the other person that you're afraid to say,
Yeah.
because it's not that person. And you're allowing that space to let it out.
Mm-hmm.
Is that actually a benefit, or is that something of maybe overstepping and kind of putting yourself in a situation you shouldn't be putting yourself?
it and that's a really great question, because, and you said this earlier also, and I'm going to tie these two pieces together. 8 billion people on the planet perceive the world through their unhealed lens. Okay, take that in for a moment. 8 billion people on the planet perceive the world through their unhealed lens. So that means if I go to you for advice and ask you something and you're not healed in that, or you have your low self-worth, your low self-esteem, you're jealous, you're envious, all the things, you're insecure, you're going to reflect back to me your own shadow. Does that make sense?
It does.
So this is why a facilitator is very critical. Because someone who has done their work does not respond to someone through their unhealed lens. Okay? Because you're mirroring back to someone what it is that they're giving you. But you have to have the ability, not you, the individual has to have the ability to go, this is what you're reflecting. And you're helping them to see who they are so they can start to look at it. And then there's guidance that comes with that. You don't just give people what their wound is and not give them anything to help heal it.
Right.
Right? Because that's what happens. This is why when a healer doesn't do their own deep work, they can only facilitate, guide, and teach to the level of their own depth of their own shadow work.
Yeah. I was more, and I get that and I understand that. And I was coming at it as I can make myself stoic like a statue to where, they could, I might interpret it as them being silly, letting out whatever they're letting out. But I'll never crack a smile. I won't be snickering and laughing. I just stay straight faced. And if they're yelling at me, I don't sit there and get like clenching my fist and getting defensive. I just have the same stoic face.
Yeah, you're holding the container for them. That's
right.
what you're doing. Yes. It takes a big skill to be able to do that without it penetrating you energetically and or emotionally, right? Because when someone's coming at you with that force, I worked at a women's trauma center, and sometimes, a lot of times, I bring humor into things because it's important. I would have someone arguing with me and resisting, and I would just be like, one of us has to have the wisdom to know the difference, and it's not you. You know what I mean?
I like that, yeah.
Because people are in their trauma. It's like you have to help them see what it is they cannot see.
Yeah. The only thing I can foresee is if I was in that situation, I would have to have either my friends having my back or the actual facilitator of the program, to where if I go, hey, I need to step outside and take a breath before we keep going, that she's not going to go, well, we only have a finite time and you agreed to this because, there's only so much someone can take, and they need kind of ground and be like, okay.
You have to regulate the nervous system.
And now we can go into like the next two people and maybe, do two back to back and two, depending on how many there are. But I would be like, nobody could stand there and go through like 10, 12 women going through their thing and be like, at the end of it going, okay, I'm done. There's going to be cracks forming. There's going to be like moments where you're like, I got to stop reacting. I can't take this on. This isn't me. Because you're just getting bombarded, and eventually it cracks. No matter how good you are and how deep you are in your shadow work, there is a point. Nobody is resistant. And I think that's where the mutual respect needs to come in, to be able to say, hey, look, I know we agreed to do this, but I need like 2 minutes to go ground and reset. Can I please have it? And be like, yes, thank you for speaking that.
Yeah. There's a lot of things, because it's not just holding the container, it's also the energy. I still cleanse myself with sage every day.
Oh, yeah.
Holding a container for someone is, I used to put an energetic bubble around myself. so that I wasn't taking on the energy of the person who I encourage to, especially women, don't express their anger. And it's necessary that we do. And so I encouraged it a lot. I'm like, let's go out into the field. Let's just go out into the field and let you just let loose out there and hold
Yeah.
the container. But no facilitator in their right mind would put a group of 20 people together and let them be in their grief and rage and anger. I mean, if that's the container you're holding, that's like for 5 people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just guessing that's what they do. I'm not a woman, so I haven't been. So I'm just going, that's what guys do. And so I'm like, I'm putting it through that filter, and I own that. And it may not be like what I'm picturing, and maybe sitting there going, I can do 20 people easy. I don't need a break. But I'll just like, I know how the warrior gets riled up and what its potential. And I also know men and women are warriors.
Mhm.
So I'm like, yeah, I'm just picturing we probably enter the warrior state the same intensity. So that's why I make that judgment of, yeah, gotta have those breaks. Because
Yeah.
I'm picturing the intensity versus the verbiage and the, what do you call it, movements or their expression. That's it.
Yeah. We, men and women, it's interesting because women express their self through their emotions and men don't. And I'm generally speaking, men express themselves through anger, through physicality, not anger, I should say physicality, and women don't. And what we need to do is balance those. They need to
Right.
be balanced in both the physical, masculine, and energy, because we have masculine and feminine energy we hold within us. Doesn't matter what your physical body is. That's
Right.
tantric work, which I also do, you know.
Right.
So there's a lot that's going on. So I know that we've run way over. Were there any more questions?
Actually, I was just gonna offer you the space because we have like a couple minutes before it's the hour and a half, and if we go a little over it, I'm fine. I just was being aware of your time and didn't want to take advantage of it, but I want to offer you space to talk about awakening within and promote that if you'd like.
Yeah. So, I want to talk about the what I'm creating, what I just created that's going to start in towards the end of April. It is the series for women that is focused on self-awareness. And it's one simple topic. It's about getting quiet. It's about honoring ourselves. Because a lot of women really spend so much time being the nurturer of the family that they don't nurture themselves. And they get to a certain point in life, whether it's 20s, whether it's 40s, or whether it's 70, where they're like, oh my God, I feel like I haven't, and now I want to go here and I just don't know how. And going here doesn't necessarily have to be shadow. That will generally always come through. It always does. And so this it's called the Inner Work Collective. I'm super excited about it because it starts just with, it's like one topic a week. It's a very the container will, because I'm really the space for me is super critical. How it's held in reverence, how it's held in sacred communication, um, and how it gives the opportunity for everyone to look at themselves. Versus now I'm coming into a container, now I'm just going to fix everyone. It's like, do you realize that you're bringing your shadow into the group now? Because that's what people don't see. This is why this work is so important and why I love it. I get super passionate about it because I've seen how many women have shifted. I have had more women come to me, several of them working with me, that were licensed psychologists with a practice. And they were like, I've never looked at myself like this, let alone taught my clients how to look at themselves. And for me, and that, you know, even though there are tears and there's anger and there's resentment and there's lack of forgiveness and all the stuff, eventually, because when we start to release that out of our body, we just start to feel better. We just start to feel better. And that is why I love doing this work, because I've seen and I've witnessed, not only in my own life, but a lot of women's lives, lots of women. I love working with men, but men, if you look at churches, if you look at not necessarily a synagogue, but mostly churches, yoga studios, a place of spirituality, it's usually 80% women and 20% men.
Oh,
And the
yeah.
reason for that is because men have been shamed. They've been shamed for showing emotion. And I'm like, I mean, for me to look at a woman in a trauma center that I worked with, and I did shadow work with them, I was like, you've been speaking about all these things, whether it was your husband or men or just whatever in general, about how they treat women and all the things that you have shared with me. I said, now let's look at how you're raising your son. And it was like, and I said, yeah. How are you raising your son to be the very thing you despise? See, this is where because we don't have any self-awareness. And this is what I'm saying. It's like we have, trust me, I had two older brothers. I learned a lot. And I had this conversation with my brother in his 20s. He's like, do you know what it feels like getting hit with a fastball at 90 miles an hour? You're 15 years old, getting hit in the nuts, and you're told to shake it off, and you want to lay on home plate and cry like a baby. And I'm like, that doesn't sound very good. And this is the thing, is like, we don't allow that. So then men grow up to just stuff all these emotions. And then we wonder why we have problems.
Exactly.
And women have a whole other set of problems. But this is why I don't work with men and women in the same container, because I know how to hold the space for men. I get it. I've seen it. I've witnessed it. I've watched it. And it's just like, no, I've had grown men sit in front of me crying. And all I did was hold the space for them and thank them for being so vulnerable. It doesn't mean that they're weak. Vulnerability and power are two of the greatest. It's the yin and the yang. It's the masculine and the feminine. And the power, you talk about power, holding both of those. Ooh, my whole body has goosebumps right now. There's so much beauty in the depth of this work that I could talk about it for the next 24 hours.
Oh, I'm right there with you.
You know, it's really beautiful stuff. You know, and you know, we would all, if you could imagine 8 billion people on the planet stopped looking outside of themselves and started looking inward, we would solve a lot of the world's problems.
I agree. And I have a message for you.
Yes.
And that is, from my heart and the heart of my shows to you. Thank you for what you're doing for humanity.
Thank you.
It's seen, it's heard, it's felt. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I love this. This was so awesome. I just, you know, whether we were sitting on the lawn somewhere, you know what I mean, in a park, and I had just met you and having this conversation, it's like, I love it. I love it because I know what can transform for people. It's,
And
how I came about in my book, it's called Burning Down the House, my own house, transforming myself because I did. I didn't transform it for a better job and more money and this and that. I transformed from the inside, from the soul, from the purpose. And that's another level of beauty.
yes, and so I will offer to everyone watching this, please like, follow, subscribe, and comment, because you never know when India may make another appearance on the show. And also, to India, do note, if you ever have something come up and you're like, ooh, I'd really like to promote this out or anything, feel free to message me, and we'll see about bringing you on and having you back on. And because I think this is the type of conversation that there's magic even in having the conversation, and the two perspectives of us, although it didn't look like it being opposites, we kind of were incongruence the whole time,
Mhm.
with a little bit of here and there, but that's just from our own personal experiences. I think there's a lot of magic that people can get out of this. And so if you're open to it, I'd be open to continuing it and having you on again and doing like a part two, or
Yes,
just
I would really love that. And two things I want to say in closing. One is if you want to contact me, you can reach me on my website, which is indiazoe.com, just indiazoe.com. The second thing is that I want to say thank you for not only doing your own work, Michael, but also creating this platform. It's a donation based platform, which means that you have no expectation of what it is that you're doing. You're being of service. You're opening the container, which is so helpful for all of us. So I just want, from the bottom of my heart, want to say thank you for that. And I hope you continue on in this journey with this show for a long time. And I would be more than happy to come back.
well, thank you. That means a lot, because what people don't realize is I share this, and I probably shared it with you, is my goal. I did share it with you. Is my goal is when I bring guests on my shows, my agenda is one agenda, and that is to put them in the best of light and to help them get their information out. And so it means a lot when I hear the guest saying, yeah, this was so comfortable. I felt so safe here. And you did, thank you for creating all this, because that's my goal. That's what I am work hard to bring. And so I really appreciate hearing it and seeing that it is seen. And so thank you for that.
Yes, you're quite welcome. Thank you. Thank you. It was a beautiful show, and I really appreciate it.
And so with that, we are going to say goodnight. And normally I have a little quip about hope, but I'm actually going to end tonight's show with an observation. And that is to you, India, when you talked about putting and doing your work on yourself before everybody else. I thought that was a beautiful way of bringing people back to the reality of the first rule of medicine that the ancient Greeks created for doctors is physician, heal thyself.
Mhm.
We've forgotten that and lost that throughout the years, and have been taught it's selfish to take care of yourself first. And so thank you for putting it in such a beautiful way of saying healing yourself first is not selfish. It is key. It is important. And I think that's why a lot of entities or forces or whatever you want to call them that are acting outside of you are pushing you to saying, oh, don't do that, because it takes away the control.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
So,
You have to run now because we're like almost 45 minutes over,
yeah.
but I
I,
appreciate it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you to all the viewers. I really appreciate it. Have a blessed evening. And thank you.
yes, thank you. Good night, everybody.